Story 1. Return to Horror Midnight Mayhem on Hudson River Inn. As a writer specializing in uncovering the darkest truths of human nature, I delved into the chilling events that unfolded on a fateful New Year's Eve aboard a ferry on the Hudson River. The air was thick with anticipation and the promise of a new beginning as passengers boarded the vessel, unaware of the impending horror that awaited them in the dead of night. Among the crowd, a man named Jacob stood out to me. His haunted eyes and nervous demeanor hinted at a past shrouded in mystery and tragedy. Little did he know that this journey would force him to confront his deepest fears and darkest secrets. The ferry departed under the cloak of darkness, the city lights fading into the distance as the vessel cut through the icy waters. Laughter and music filled the air, masking the undercurrent of unease that gripped Jacob and a few other observant passengers. As the clock struck midnight, signaling the arrival of the new year, a sudden jolt rocked the ferry, sending screams echoing through the night. Panic ensued as the passengers realized they were adrift in the middle of the river, far from shore and help. Whispers of sabotage and foul play spread like wildfire among the survivors, and Jacob found himself at the center of a web of deceit and manipulation. Clutching a piece of evidence that could unravel the truth behind the disaster, he embarked on a treacherous journey through the bowels of the ferry, pursued by shadowy figures intent on silencing him. The claustrophobic corridors echoed with the sounds of pursuit, each step bringing Jacob closer to the heart of the conspiracy. As he pieced together the fragments of the puzzle, a chilling realization dawned on him. The ferry's tragic fate was no accident but a meticulously orchestrated plan to silence those who dared to uncover the truth. With time running out and danger closing in, Jacob made a desperate bid for survival, his every move shadowed by unseen forces hell-bent on preserving their sinister secrets. The truth, more horrifying than he could have imagined, lurked just beyond his grasp, taunting him with its elusive presence. In a final heart-stopping confrontation, Jacob confronted the mastermind behind the ferry fiasco, a face from his past twisted by greed and madness. As the truth was laid bare in the cold light of dawn, the ferry's dark legacy was sealed, and Jacob emerged from the ordeal forever changed. Anonymous Spectator Story. Story 2. Fatality in Seattle. New Year's Ferry Disaster. I remember it like it was yesterday, New Year's Eve in Seattle. The cold air cut through my skin as I waited in line to board the ferry that would take us to the New Year's party on the island. The twinkling lights of the ship reflected on the dark waters of the harbor, creating an eerie atmosphere that I couldn't ignore. As soon as the ferry set off, a feeling of apprehension took hold of me. The sound of the engines echoed through the narrow corridors, and the passengers' excitement contrasted with the stillness of the night. I found myself surrounded by unfamiliar faces, all eager to celebrate the arrival of the new year. As the ferry moved through the turbulent waters, a thick fog began to form around us. Visibility decreased with each passing minute, and the air seemed heavier, as if we were being enveloped by an invisible and threatening presence. Then I heard a scream coming from the upper deck. I ran to see what was happening and found a terrifying scene. A hooded figure stood at the edge of the ship, staring down into the dark waters below. Before anyone could stop her, she threw herself into the icy sea, disappearing into the dark depths. Panic quickly spread among the passengers, and soon everyone was crowded on the deck, trying to understand what had happened. That's when we realized that the fog around us had turned into a furious storm, rocking the ferry violently and making it sway dangerously. As waves crashed against the ship's hull, a deafening rumble filled the air. The ferry began to tilt dangerously from side to side, throwing unbalanced passengers to the floor. Chaos reigned, and desperation mixed with fear as we struggled to stay on our feet. Then I realized that the hooded figure was not just any stranger, but a vengeful spirit seeking justice. She had been one of the victims of a previous accident on the same ferry, and now she had returned to exact her revenge on New Year's Eve. As the ferry slowly sank into the turbulent waters, I found myself surrounded by the suffocating darkness of the ocean, unable to escape the tragic fate that awaited us. The last sound I heard was the distant echo of passengers' screams, mingling with the roar of the waves, before everything went silent. And so, the fatality in Seattle New Year's ferry disaster became yet another dark tragedy in the city's history, leaving behind only haunted memories and a grim warning to those who dared to challenge the ocean's treacherous waters. Anonymous Spectator Story. Story 3. Nightmare on the Hudson, the Haunting of New Year's Ferry. As I stood on the deck of the New York City ferry, the icy wind whipped through my coat, sending shivers down my spine. The city lights twinkled in the distance, casting an eerie glow over the Hudson River. It was New Year's Eve, and I had decided to take a late-night ferry ride to ring in the new year in a different way. The ferry was nearly empty, save for a few scattered passengers huddled together for warmth. I found a secluded spot near the edge of the deck and gazed out at the dark waters below. The sound of the ferry's engines hummed in the background, creating a hypnotic rhythm that seemed to lull me into a trance. Suddenly, a group of rough-looking individuals emerged from the shadows. They were clad in leather jackets and wore menacing expressions on their faces. I recognized them as members of a notorious urban gang that had been causing chaos in the city for months. My heart raced as they approached, their footsteps echoing ominously on the deck. One of the gang members, a burly man with a scar running down his cheek, locked eyes with me. "What are you doing here, outsider?" he growled, his voice dripping with malice. I tried to stammer out a response, but fear had rendered me speechless. The gang surrounded me, their presence suffocating. I could feel the weight of their collective gaze bearing down on me, like vultures circling their prey. Without warning, the leader of the gang lunged towards me, his fist raised menacingly. I closed my eyes, bracing for the impact, but it never came. Instead, I heard a blood-curdling scream pierce the night air. When I opened my eyes, I saw the gang members recoiling in horror, their faces contorted in terror. A ghostly figure had materialized on the deck, its form flickering in and out of existence like a mirage. It was dressed in tattered rags, its eyes hollow sockets that seemed to bore into the souls of those who dared to look upon it. The gang members scrambled to escape, their bravado shattered by the spectral presence. As the ghostly figure advanced towards me, a sense of dread washed over me. I could feel its icy touch seeping into my bones, freezing me in place. But instead of malice, I sensed a deep sadness emanating from the ghost, a longing for justice left unfulfilled. In a flash of realization, I understood. The ghost was a victim of the gang, a soul trapped in limbo, seeking retribution for the injustices inflicted upon it. With a newfound resolve, I stood my ground and faced the ghost, offering a silent vow to help it find peace. The ghost nodded solemnly and vanished into the night, leaving behind a sense of closure that lingered in the air. The ferry continued its journey down the Hudson River, but the memory of that fateful night would haunt me forever. Anonymous Spectator Story.